Meanwhile, US and UK carry out strike in Yemen in retaliation for Houthi attacks on the Red Sea shipping. Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C., gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Caroline, good to see you. Over to you.
Thanks, Shabendu. Well, the United States and Britain launched strikes against sites linked to the Houthi movement in Yemen on Thursday, the first on the country since the group started targeting international shipping in the Red Sea late last year. Well, Russia condemned the attacks, calling it an irresponsible adventure that risks sowing chaos across the region.
Consequences were promised and delivered as the US and Britain launched airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. The strikes come in response to group attack on ships in the Red Sea. Last month, the United States formed a coalition of more than 20 nations called Operation Prosperity Guardian to respond to the Houthi attacks on ships in the Red Sea and vowed to eliminate all the targets. The White House stated that the airstrikes were a direct response to unprecedented Houthi attacks on international maritime vessels since last November. The strikes were carried out by aircraft, ship and submarine. UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak confirmed that the Royal Air Force participated in the attacks. He said in a statement, "The United Kingdom will always stand up for freedom of navigation and the free flow of trade." The US said Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands supported the operation. President Joe Biden cautioned in a statement that he would not hesitate to further take action if needed. Australian Defence Minister stated that the actions are about maintaining freedom of navigation on the high seas.
Australia's support of these actions came in the form of personnel in the operational headquarters. These are very important actions. The actions that have been taken today, supported by Australia, are about maintaining freedom of navigation on the high seas. They are about maintaining global trade. And that is completely central to Australia's national interest.
Japan also supported the US and British actions, condemning Houthi forces for violating the free passage of ships in the region.
Japan condemns the Houthi forces' continued actions that violate rights and free passage of vessels around Arabian Peninsula, including the Red Sea.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia called for restraint and urged avoiding escalation in response to the airstrikes. Russia has asked an urgent meeting of the United Nations Security Council to discuss military strikes on Yemen by the United States.
We strongly condemn these irresponsible actions by the United States and its allies. A large-scale military escalation in the Red Sea region could undermine the positive trends that have emerged recently in the Yemeni settlement process, as well as provoke a destabilization of the situation throughout the Middle East.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken also discussed the situation in the Red Sea over the phone. The Houthi attacks have disrupted international commerce, forcing international shipping to take the long route around South Africa to avoid being struck. Western nations hope that the strikes could halt further escalation by Houthi fighters in the Red Sea.
Well, Nick Harper joins us now live from Washington, D.C. for more. So, Nick, the Pentagon has spoken in the last hour. What did they have to say about what's going on?
That's right, yeah, an update from the Pentagon spokesperson saying that the initial assessment by the United States on these airstrikes is that they had a good effect. The US saying, though, that they will continue to monitor the situation in Yemen. We've also had confirmation from the Pentagon saying that they do not intend to send any additional US troops to the Red Sea region. We're also told that the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who has been in hospital since the start of the year, has been actively engaged in directing these strikes. We're also told that he's been speaking regularly to President Biden, the two men speaking several times over the course of the last couple of days. President Biden, though, is also warning that this may not be the end, that there is a potential for more strikes to come. He said that this had sent a clear message that the US will not tolerate attacks by the Houthis on commercial shipping, but also saying that he will not hesitate to direct further actions if necessary. We've also seen this broader coalition, about 14 countries in total, all endorsing these strikes. And we're told that a number of them, including Canada and Australia, will be providing material support, largely in the form of some certain intelligence materials and some other bits and pieces that they say that they will be able to provide to this US-UK coalition when it comes to the actual strikes themselves.
Well, Nick, you mentioned President Biden there, but how is support? Is he facing criticism within his own party in the US?
Yeah, already criticism from one Democratic lawmaker in California who was very swift, really within a couple of hours of these strikes taking place, giving an interview to a US network here in which he heavily criticized the US president. This was Ro Khanna. He's a lawmaker out in California. He said that the action of the president threatened to widen the conflict even further around the region. He also said that Biden should have got authorization from the US Congress first, pointing out that the president had time to speak to other allied nations, but he hadn't found the time to speak to Congress to get the approval and authorization that would normally be needed for the United States to carry out a strike like this. On the diplomatic front, we also know that there will be a UN Security Council emergency meeting taking place this afternoon, just after a pre-planned meeting looking at the situation in Gaza. Russia has called this meeting specifically wanting to look at and investigate the actions of the US and the UK in response to these airstrikes.
Thank you, Nick. That was Nick Harper reporting live from Washington, D.C.